You know who made it. Eventually. Hello, good evening, ladies and
A
gentlemen.
lot is
Welcome to
going on in the
Rickcast.
world of
I
cable
think they
news,
called
and
myself.
MSNBC
What is
is
it?
now changing
Looks
its
like I have a case of the Mondays. How we doing? Hope everybody had a wonderful. There we go. There we go. We just want a little bit more of me. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. We are back here, starting to get into this week. Last week before I head out for a small vacation. But I'll talk about that later on this week. But yeah, I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. I certainly did. It was fine. Did a little bit of work, a little bit of relaxing. Obviously, went to church, best part of the weekend. And now we're back on the grind in the dog days of summer, which I always use. Yeah. What am I? I'm going to be very, very sad when the dog days of summer are over because what am I going to talk about if I can't talk about the dog days of summer? So, anyway, good evening, chat. I hope everybody is doing well out there. All right. I know I say all right a bunch. Um, it's just what I do. What are we going to talk about tonight? We have many, many things to discuss. We are going to talk about the illegal U-turn that's taking everybody by storm, and the fact that this is yet another result of illegal immigration. Because the guy who in Florida, there was a terrible wreck because a Sikh driver decided to pull a U-turn in the middle of the highway because he was using one of those unofficial cutaways that cops and medical personnel use. He was like, I will use this now to turn. And he was just like, all right, I turn. And you can't U-turn with an 18-wheeler. So, yeah, it is heightening the frustration a lot of people are having with the lack of deportations that are supposed to be taking place, and they're not. And there seems to be a protected class from South Asia that no matter how much crying, whining, and complaining we're making, they're not getting deported, or they're not stopping the importation of said class of people. And a lot of people are worried about 10 years from now, the radical cultural shift that will take place when this group of people are actually in power. So, people are worried about that. Then we are going to talk about Trump pushing Zelensky to meet with Putin, and it looks like it's probably going to work in that regard. We have an update on that. We're going to take a real quick look at Pope Leo at 100 days. Reaction, positive, negative, your thoughts on Pope Leo. We can talk about it when it gets there. And then finally, we'll do some box office wrap up and check out for the day. So it's going to be a good day, ladies and gentlemen. Do me a favor while you're hanging out. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. I apologize to my buddy Dean Oakes, my brother in arms. He gave me some great ideas for the board, and I just didn't get around to fixing the board. I put up the Holy Face on Friday, and we're just, I'm trying to move some stuff around. And the procrastination bug hit me today. I had an annoying, I don't want to say rough or bad because it wasn't. The most appropriate term is I had an annoying morning where things just were not working out. And so that kind of pushed off the rest of the day's stuff that I needed to get done. So that's why the board and everything is still kind of the way it goes. So yes, that's our setup for tonight. So let's get into a couple things. There's a bunch of stuff that's out there. I was going to comment on there's this a Democrat attorney general in Rhode Island. She got busted for being essentially a Karen, and there's a 5-minute video. I don't have time for this. If you know Rhode Islanders, this is pretty much par for the course, especially women who are put in positions of authority and they just let themselves get carried away with it, and Democrats who get into positions of authority. Speaking of which, we're done talking about Texas. They're back in session. Guess what? Nothing happened. Nothing happened to the Texas Democrats. Shocking, I know. But the map will get passed at some point. When that story comes up, we'll talk about the fact the map was passed and all this was just a waste of our time, energy, and just overall everything. And so we're not covering the day by day stuff with the Texas ledge. It was funny at first, but now it's just kind of annoying. And I just don't feel like talking about it. So I don't think it's yeah, go figure, right? Shockingly enough, um nothing happened to them. Apparently the Democrats are going to be escorted by a DPS agent, so they'll come back on Wednesday. Ooh. But outside of that, no, none of them got put in jail, none of them got put in cuffs, blah, 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 blah. All the stuff that Abbott promised on Fox News, because that's how he got on Fox News. But outside of that, I mean, the lawsuit is still technically pending, but that's going to be such old news by the time. Yeah, it is disappointing. It is disappointing because there's enough conservatives in the state to make this state more conservative in its legislative decision making than Florida. But the country club Republican ideas that Texas is a country club Republican state, right? It still operates with the Bushes, and like the Condoleezza Rices and the Dick Cheneys and that whole country club Republican mentality. And so you're not going to get a lot, despite the fact that they always try to um, uh, they try to act MAGA, but they're not. I did do a movie review on Rick Cass Reviews. I did a movie review for Nobody too, and it was decent. It was decent. So it is what it is in that regard. All right. Speaking of movies, nice transition there, Brian. I appreciate it. As the wrenches are assembling for tonight's show, and I appreciate the wrenches assembling. We talked when the Passion of the Christ 2, I'm sorry, the Resurrection of the Christ. I don't know what's going on with my stuff, but the Resurrection of the Christ, when that was announced, my big thing was that the people were going to freak out about it, especially given Mel Gibson's stance in the church, and the things he's made, and all of these other things that were going out there. And unfortunately, my fears were a little bit confirmed. Let's check this out. This is a warm-up story. Now, this is not me taking a swipe at Matt Gaspers. I think he's a fine guy. We haven't really connected or communicated. I worked with his organization a little bit when I was back on the channel, when I was doing the social media stuff. Nothing bad to say about him. But I would like to point to the mentality. I'd like to point to the mentality that is being put here that I don't like. What is the best life lesson or the best piece of advice I heard from somebody other than my parents was from Colin Cowherd when I was listening to a sports talk radio back when I used to do that. And I said this back, last week. Disappointment comes from expectations. That if you ever look at what you're disappointed in, it's because your expectations were too high or they were not realistic. That's where disappointment comes from. You set the bar to a certain level that disappointment is almost a guarantee. And unfortunately, once again, I'm not throwing shade at Matt Gaspers. I'm just saying this is the stuff that's going to lead to disappointment. Where he tweets, and he tweeted this today or yesterday. The most epic sequel in film history is in the works. May God bless and direct Mel Gibson and everyone involved in this monumental project. Why? Why did you have to say the? You could have just said, "May God bless and direct Mel Gibson and everybody else on the monumental project." You're setting an expectation when you say stuff like this that can only lead to disappointment. And I get it. I love The Passion of the Christ. We've talked about that. I enjoy watching. I watch it every Good Friday. But that movie didn't have expectations on it. This film does. And if you studied or even looked at film history, films that are supposedly disappointing are the ones that have the expectations on them, because it will be impossible for Mel Gibson to appease every single trad. And I don't mean to start flame wars here. Most Novus Ordo, or more, not, and this is not every trad, by the way. A lot of trads will go and enjoy it, and they talk to me about how much they love the fact. A lot of people who go to the TLM will go and enjoy it. The commentators, the people on these platforms who have a right to speak their opinion, when they make bold statements like this, are leading themselves and others to be greatly disappointed. And I don't like that, because it's not like Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel and the entire cast and crew aren't putting together a monumental effort, considering they're going to release a movie that's so stinking long, it's going to be put into 2 parts. But this starts to gin up expectation. Now, that's fine. But it's ultimately, and this is kind of like what I was talking about with Pope Leo, which got me cast out of Catholic Inc. for good, that fateful day when I dared to question Eric Sammons on the racialization of his Pope pick. Oh, well, we need Cardinal Sarah to be Pope. We need Cardinal Sarah. We need Cardinal Sarah. God pray for Cardinal Sarah. Yeah, Cardinal Sarah would have been awesome as Pope. But if you frame it like that, and it happened, people were disappointed in the new Holy Father. Same thing here. Disappointment comes from expectations. And I fear comments like the first sentence that Matt is putting out there will lead to expectations that will ultimately lead to people being disappointed. Instead of saying, hey, pray for Mel Gibson, pray for the crew, and whatever they give us, let's be thankful for it because they put the time and the effort to do so. Kind of this idea of, I want it my way, which has kind of been the thing that has put me at odds with a lot of the Latin Mass commentators. Not Latin Mass Catholics. There's so many good ones that I have good relationships with. But the Latin Mass commentators, I always get put at odds with them, because I always try to, I always point out, like, guys, the Pope has 1.4 billion Catholics to look after. I know you think your issue is the most important issue, but you got to look at it from his point of view. But that's the first thing I wanted to get and just talk about, is that's an example of disappointment coming from expectations. And I don't like that idea. Not that I'm like, Matt Gaspers is an idiot for doing this. No, he's not. It's natural to be excited about these things, but we shouldn't let our excitement for something cloud or gin us up to Peter, that's probably the best way to look at it, right? That's probably the best way to look at it. You have a band, or even like a first film that comes out, and it's just like mind-blowingly awesome. And then you see the second movie or the second album, this is going to be the greatest. And then oh, it's not. Oh, this is actually bad. Oh my gosh, what's happening? And everybody freaks out about it. So it's something just that I just worry about. Not because I think Matt Gaspers is bad, but it's a good example of people piling expectations onto it, which is not Rick Barrett, not a theologian, really bad Catholic, think that it's a bad form of charity to put your expectation on somebody else's work. And that's an expectation when you say it's the most epic sequel ever in film history. Latin Mass Catholic, no, not commentator. Latin Mass Catholic, right? One of my many aliases. It's one of my many aliases out there. Now Rick Barrett, bad Catholic. I'll be the first to tell you that. It worries me when those that's a pretty high bar to fill. The most epic sequel in film history. You could say highly anticipated sequel. Now, I'm not telling him how to speak. Obviously, he's not going to listen to me anyway. Let's be careful with the expectations, because it's going to lead to ultimately some people being very upset about it. And that's just not fair to Mel, to you as the person who's expecting the film. Right? It's not fair to anybody, because you're going to be disappointed. So that's all. That's of course, because I'm saying it this way, everybody's going to be like, Rick, you're such a jerk and all these other kinds of things. Fine, whatever. I've accepted my lot in life. I've accepted who I am. Let's move on to our second warm-up act of the night. This is kind of funny. It's kind of funny. I think it is. Check it out. MS Now is going to replace MSNBC after NBC Universal's spinoff.
A lot is going on in the world of cable news, and MSNBC is now changing its name to My Source News Opinion World, or MS Now for short. MSNBC will also remove NBC's peacock symbol from its logo. This comes as part of its corporate divorce from NBC.
It sounds more generic and broad-based and like focused on the now, as opposed to one old school name. So it sounds like a reinvention.
The network, which typically appeals to liberal audiences and has personality hosts including Rachel Maddow, has slowly been building its own separate news division. Last November, NBC Universal spun off MSNBC, CNBC, and the Golf Channel, among others, into its own company, Versant. But none of the other networks are changing their name.
It'll make me investigate it when I get home later, to see what differences may be from the regular NBC site.
Maddow said that MSNBC will no longer get, quote, leftovers from NBC News because it won't have to compete with NBC News programs for reporting product from out in the field. MSNBC's liberal bent has caused tension in the past, with President Donald Trump referring to the cable network as MSDNC for Democratic National Committee.
Thanks, random lady. Anyway, so I actually think, and that's not the right one, I actually think this is a smart move on the part of MSNBC. It's an acknowledgement of what we all have known since 2016. Right? We all know that it's just an opinion site. No actual news comes out of MSNBC. It's just Rachel Madcow. Sorry, Mike. Until I come up with a better one, I'm stealing that nickname because it's really good. It's nothing more than Rachel Madcow screaming and making stuff up. Her stunt double, that guy, whatever that guy's name is, the guy who looked like her stunt double. These are not them. These are the stunt doubles. That dude, whatever he looked like. Lawrence O'Donnell, who for some reason is still... Like, these people still have shows. It was a shock when Joy Reid got fired because she was terrible too. None of these shows and nothing on this network is fact-based. So it's just my source news, my source opinion, my source world. Whatever. Fine. It's actually a win in my view, the way I interpret this, I view this as I hated Smart Hulk in Avengers Endgame, but it's true. I view this as a total win. This is a win. Because now, when somebody says, "Oh, I get my news from MS Now," people are going to go, "What? You're just getting the sloppy seconds." I like how they're saying, "We're not getting the sloppy seconds from NBC." That's because it is acknowledged that this is not even within the news umbrella. So it's good. I actually think it's a positive, and this is a good point. Dean and Peter are bringing up some pretty solid points in the chat as my chat of wrenches. Actually, I think we should maybe change you guys from the bar rats to the my stable of wrenches instead of stable of wenches. You're my stable of wrenches. It's a miracle that they'll survive in any form. Will they get to keep their jobs? I believe that this is the beginning of the end of the network of this channel. This is just the acknowledgement. This is just the acknowledgement that this channel is not a legit news source. So if somebody says, "Well, MS Now is reporting," who's going to believe it? It's good. The toolbox. I think I like that. I think I like the toolbox. My toolbox. You guys are here. But this idea, I'm sorry, my allergies are beating my face in, as they normally do when it's 100 degrees out consistently as it is. Let me wrap this up because I'm just repeating the same thing 5 times. I view it as a win. This is acknowledgement from NBC Universal that this network is trash. Nobody believes anything that comes out of it. It's not a real news network. It really is fake news. Whatever you want to say about the Donald, this is correct. It is fake news. They're even acknowledging their network is now fake news. This is great. I think that people, and I actually heard this from when I was a teaching assistant at a community college, and we called ourselves support specialists, instructional support, whatever I was. I had a liberal instructor say, you'll know you have a good professor, a good lecturer, a good writer of a book when they tell you their bias up front. Because everybody has their own opinions. You cannot write. There's no such thing as something that's objective. The myth of objectivity was created by news media to give them cover for their opinions. All the way back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, we are objective, and that's why I am saying this. Blah, blah, blah. Nobody is objective. Nobody can be objective. Even if you try, your opinions and your biases and your beliefs will filter into your writing, your show, your book, whatever it is. And I think it would be much better if every news network was like MS Now or M Snow for the snowflakes, as Michael Thomas writes. Right? You want to get your news from MS Now? All right, we know you're a flaky liberal that believes that men can be women and all this stuff. You get your news from Fox News. All right, you're probably 70 years old and you're about to get a reverse mortgage. You get your news from CNN, you're sitting in an airport. Like we know now with these individual brandings, these rebrandings, what the baseline of the network is. And I think it's great. I think this is something that needed to happen. So I know a lot of people are dunking on him. I personally think fantastic. Personally think it's fantastic. Personally think it should have happened sooner. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Rickcast. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. If you're on X and you're watching right now, do me a favor, repost the stream. That'll help more people catch it. Not because we're giving up on X, but we're not investing the money and the time into it because it's too flaky. Like one night it'll be 200, one night it'll be 15. So we need you guys, if you are on X, to repost the stream and help it out. If you're on YouTube, put this on Facebook or Gab or wherever else you got to help the show grow as well. So greatly appreciated on all of that. Let's get to our first official story of the night. I say official, but we've already gone like 3 stories deep. This was a terrible incident that took place over the weekend, or actually on August 12th, which would have been last Tuesday? So last Tuesday, Hajar Singh, a commercial semi-truck driver, made an illegal U-turn on a Florida turnpike in St. Lucie, Lucius, I'm an idiot, whatever it is, county, in a Florida county, causing a collision that resulted in the deaths of 3 passengers in a minivan. This is the video. I know everybody has seen it, where he just makes a random U-turn, and you can actually see the minivan. You can actually see the point where those people died. You can actually see the point where these people, unfortunately, in this minivan, and I'm not trying to do this as like Faces of Death 35, but these people are driving on the highway, and Mr. Singh here is like, I make U-turn now, and he just made a U-turn, and these people, they were probably driving, even if you're driving the speed limit, if you hit a semi-truck at 55 miles an hour, you are getting decapitated. And this dude, look at his reaction to this. Nothing. He made zero. And this is the famous picture that's going around here. In a scene of death and destruction, this dude is not even reacting. There's no remorse on this guy's face. Singh made this illegal U-turn at a prohibited location near mile marker 170. Now, I know some of you guys, Brian, that's awful. Probably true, but awful. A lot of you guys are like, hey, I've done that before. And you know what? Let's put the cards on the table. I've used one of those unofficial things to make a U-turn before. But I'm not driving an 18-wheeler. I'm not driving something that's going to stick out into all lanes of traffic. You just don't do it. Officials determined that Singh entered the U.S. illegally by crossing the border. So let's actually get to Brenna Morello. I'm sorry. I'm having a tough time with names tonight because, as the great Alex Jones said one time, kind of retarded. Hajar Singh was arrested by the U.S. Marshals in California during Trump's first administration back in 2016, during his first time. He faced expedited removal under the first Trump administration, but expressed fear in returning to India. Why would you be afraid of going back to India, Hajar? Why would you be afraid of going back to India? So, U.S. Customs Enforcement Service confirmed his fear with a positive, credible fear determination, leading to his release on a $5,000 immigration bond in 2019 with a notice to appear. And guess what? I guess he didn't. And he has been in immigration proceedings since then. He was given a CDL despite being an illegal, an illegal immigrant invader. And that was under Gavin Newsom's California. And yes, Pat, you're correct. You are 100% correct. The trucking industry has been decimated by foreigners. And one of the guys I talk to all the time on X, he's a truck driver. And some of the things that the fact that these 18-wheelers aren't 5-speeds anymore. You actually don't have to know how to drive. They're automatics. So the skill that was necessary for them before, not so much. Secondly, like every other H-1B visa job and all the other illegal jobs that come in, these trucking companies pay these people at a ridiculously lower rate. No, Peter, he did get his CDL in there. Yeah, you know what? We need to get rid of that. I don't care. India's supposed to be an ally. And there's plenty of other. Here's the thing with that, Peter. You are correct. Fear of return is grounds for an asylum claim, except that there's plenty of other countries between India and the United States that he could have gone to. He didn't need to come here. So this was from the Florida highway, whatever, the Florida DMV version. State troopers responded to a crash on Florida's turnpike occurring. The crash involved a minivan and a commercial semi-truck based on our initial but ongoing criminal investigation. The event of the driver of the commercial truck, he drove recklessly without regard for the safety of others in attempting to do this. Somewhere around here it says that the defendant obtained the commercial driver's license in the state of California under the federal authority delegated by ICE to the FHP state troopers. So yeah, he got his CDL despite the fact he shouldn't have been able to get a driver's license. And this is one of those problems that we have with blue states giving he's from India. He's from India. He ain't from like Guatemala or any of these other. He is from India. I'm afraid to go back to India. I don't care, homie. You don't want to go back to India? I'm going to send you back to India. You go to Vietnam, you go to Singapore, you go to Japan, you can go to the Philippines, you can go to Midway Island for all I give a flying cow fart. They ain't coming back here. We are not the first safe country you run into when you are fleeing. Hell, you went to Mexico. You could have applied for asylum in Mexico. The whole fear thing is ridiculous. And it's a problem that these licenses are granted in California and these guys are able to drive throughout these United States. So, and people, I've got a couple guys who drive trucks who are like, dude, it's awful. It's awful out there now. You go to truck stops, it's like you're in Mumbai. And there is a growing resentment to people from Southeast Asia because the idea that you come here and you integrate. These people who are coming from Southeast Asia are not integrating into these United States. Okay, this guy certainly didn't. He certainly didn't. He came here. And the fact is, it is a clash of cultures. Now, I always bring this up. My wife, when she went to TCU for her master's, there were a couple guys from Southeast Asia in her master's program in there. And we actually went out to lunch with them a couple times when they were in a group. They were actually some of the nicest dudes around. And you want to know why? You want to know why? Because they were Catholic. They were Catholics from the Catholic provinces in India. And it's actually funny. The Catholic provinces in India do so much better than the rest of the country overall. But the fact of the matter is, between the H-1B visas, which are coming in, flooding the country, taking jobs away from Americans, and then you have these types of things, these programs that bring in these Southeast Asians, and they take trucking jobs. They take trucking jobs from all these people that could do it. Not because they're more qualified, because they'll do it for dirt cheap. They'll do it for dirt cheap. And I think somebody said this in our chat already. I believe whoever gave this guy a truck that company should lose its business license. I'm that extreme that if you hire illegal immigrants, period, you should get your company shut down. I really do. I know. Well, Rick, your favorite restaurant's going to go out of business. Tough. I don't care. I'll make my food at home. I don't need restaurants. I know that's an extremist thing to say. I don't need them. And I certainly don't need whatever culture they are importing. The fact that most Western women think that Southeast Asians are, they have this Zen Buddhist nonsense because of eat, pray, love. And they somehow have a higher, spiritual center because they pretend to meditate or whatever the crap is really something that we're really starting to see under the Trump administration that people are getting upset about. And I am in line with those people. I'm in line with those people. Now, are all Indians bad? No. But if this dude illegally entered the country, I'm afraid to go to India. I'm sending you back to India, homie. I don't care. You can go to another country. But you're here illegally. And now, because his fear of going back to India led to 3 people dying. 3 Americans are dead. 3 people who were born here, who were citizens of Florida, are now dead. They're gone. Because we prioritize the fear of a grown man of India. India is a pretty big stinking place. I know y'all got your caste system in place there, but go somewhere else. You know what? If you're in fear of your life in India, go to Afghanistan. If you're in fear of your life in India, go to Pakistan, as Trump said. Go to Iran, go to Iraq, go to Israel. I don't care. Don't come here. Because you come here and then you do all these other kinds of things. Yeah, we can eat at Rick's house. Hey, man, I make some pretty mean, like, egg and cheese sandwiches. I'm not going to lie. They're pretty good. I make them on bagels. They're delicious. I know, bagels, the Jews, whatever. I like bagels. It's a Northeast thing. But yeah, the entire trucking industry has been decimated by this. Right? It's been decimated by this type of worker. And of course, bleeding heart liberals will say, oh, well, if he's afraid, he should be able to stay here. Nope. No, I don't care. We have done too much. I've also said on this program, I am for a moratorium on all immigration for 10 years. I don't want anybody coming in. I don't want H-1Bs. I don't want none of it. I don't want any of it. I understand that we're in a demographic time bomb because there are not enough babies, but that's an abortion issue as well. But backfilling these United States with people like Mr. Singh here is having devastating consequences. Most hotels are owned by Southeast Asians because they get sweet loans from the government because they're minorities for business programs, and they own pretty much all the truck stops. They own all of these things. All of these opportunities that Americans, white, black, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, they want to have, they can't get them because just like with everything else, and one of the reasons it bubbled up during Trump's campaign in 2024 that people are crying out for mass deportations is because Americans of all stripes feel there is no opportunity for them. And if you do work, you do have a job at one of these gas stations or a trucking company, and one of these Southeast Asians buys it out, guess what? You're out of a job because they're going to go and bring in all of their buddies. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And this should, and it won't, because Trump has already given a free pass to farm workers and hotels. This should ramp up the deportations of all of them. I don't give a rip. Get rid of them all. Get rid of them all. There was another video from another place, I think in Chicago, there was another crash, and somebody in the chat already said, this is happening on a daily basis. You want to drive on 35? Good luck. I-35, which goes up and down the state of Texas, north to south. You want to drive on that right now? Good luck. You better have a Humvee and a 50 cal on top to try and get through that mess. And these guys just they act like they're driving a Mini Cooper when they swerve in and out of traffic. It's just terrible. It's terrible, and I just cannot. You know, it is one of these things that I'm mad about it. I'm mad about it because they don't deserve, I guess is the word. They don't deserve to be here. And we act like it, just like, people get mad with the other Southeast Asians that have taken over Dearborn and all these other places. They act like it's their right to be here. It's not. And yet, we see it in Britain. We see it in the rest of the Western civilization, that natives are being pushed to the side for these people, and they act like they're better than that. Yeah, and I don't know the specific regions where it is, but the provinces and the places in India that are more Catholic, their quality of life is vastly better than the rest of the country. Vastly better than the rest of the country. But that's a whole caste system that people don't want to talk about. India is known for its caste system. That's why there's public defecation. No matter how many campaigns they run, everybody wants to watch Slumdog Millionaire and romance, all that kind of stuff. It ain't like that, man. It ain't like that. And the fact that, Westerners don't understand how good they have it, because when Southeast Asians come here, they think they have a right to females. They do. And only when it's too late, when they're here, do you realize how terrible of a mistake you made. Yeah, I mean, Frisco. I've seen videos out of Frisco. Frisco is like mini Delhi, mini New Delhi now. Because we just let them in. Let them go here, go do whatever you want. Here's a loan and all these other kinds of things. What kind of support do you need? Meanwhile, you got vets on the street. You got, homeless encampments out the wazoo. You got people strung out on drugs and all kinds of other things. Natives here in these United States, all strung out, all in need, all desperate for help. Meanwhile, these people who are not citizens, who are coming here, to take your jobs and your possessions, and have no remorse if something bad happens to you. They don't care. And it's pretty sad. All right, this is Rick Cass. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. Let's get to our next story of the night. Talk about this briefly. Trump met with Zelensky today after meeting with Putin on Friday. Putin has confirmed that there was a tentative deal agreed to, not disclosing anything because you're not going to tell. It's like when you negotiate a contract, you can't talk about the contract until it's signed. But Trump today met with Zelensky. I mean, he met with world leaders, I mean, the European leaders, trying to will this thing across the finish line. And the fact is, Zelensky and the Ukrainians said, we're not signing any deal that gives up Ukrainian territory. Homie, you lost that territory. You're never getting it back. Hopefully Trump is that blatant with them, saying, you lost the Donbass. You're not getting it back. Yeah, Ukrainian pride. Here's your flags in the bio. You're not getting the Donbass back. We're not putting troops on the ground. The French aren't getting it back for you. The Germans are getting it back. Half of Europe is still buying their oil from the Russians. Anyway, let's take a look at this. From Newsweek.com, President Trump said Monday he expects a three-way summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky to take shape soon, calling it a quote-unquote matter of when, not if. The remarks came during a high-stakes talk at the White House, where Trump met with Zelensky and a delegation of European leaders. What to know? Trump said he will call Putin after Monday's meeting to begin coordinating this trilateral summit. Zelensky, backed by European leaders, arrived in Washington to push for stronger U.S. security guarantees. Yeah, I met with Hunter Biden to discuss supply chain issues. Trump has floated a peace deal that may involve Ukraine ceding territory, including parts of the Donbass, as European leaders, including Macron and Meloni, are urging protections for Ukraine akin to NATO Article 5. Zelensky has rejected territorial concessions and insists any deal must preserve Ukraine's sovereignty. You're not getting that land back. You're going to have to give up some of it. The best outcome is Russia gets the Donbass. We'll set up a DMZ, and we'll call it from there. We'll turn Ukraine into the North and South Korea. We'll turn Ukraine into a demilitarized zone, a DMZ. The U.S. will guarantee security. We'll have security guarantees. We'll tell Putin, listen, we got to put some U.S. security forces in Ukraine because that's the only way Zelensky and these guys are going to sign that deal. No, we won't go any further. Of course, if you get it, President BBL or President Jasmine Crockett, they'll probably launch every missile into Russia that they can find. But this is one of those things. Deadly Russian strikes in Kiev and others have killed at least 10 civilians hours before the talks. Trump said U.S. support for Ukraine would continue, but he did not rule out involving American troops, which is, I hope it's just a bluff. I hope that's just him bluffing, because troops on the ground in Ukraine would end his legacy. It would end it. Nobody, except for the weird whack jobs on Twitter with 5 different identifiers, wants to put troops on the ground in the Ukraine. GPAT, I'm fine with them putting a wall up. Right? Put a wall up between the two. Do it. Make it a neutral country. These are all things that need to be discussed, and Zelensky needs to just shut up and deal with it. He can't, we are going to fight to the, you're not going to, fine. You know what? We'll walk out and we will let the Russians just roll in. No support. You guys will be taken over in a matter of weeks. So it is that. And then European officials warned that failure to stop Putin in Ukraine could embolden further actions. I don't know. That's just a lie. If they're so worried about it, why are they buying oil from them still? That's really the question. If they're so worried about it, then why are they still buying oil from the Russians? And this is from Ground News just recently. He's begun the agreement with face-to-face meetings, and he's begun the arrangements for a face-to-face meeting between the two. So hopefully we'll see something that happens. I hope the troop thing is nothing more than a tactic in negotiations, because it would be devastating if he did put troops on the ground. But at least there's movement. At least there's movement here. I don't know. And by the way, Putin has outlasted, he's been president since George W. Bush was in office. So, I mean, for that one time when he was the prime minister, but he's been running the country for that long amount of time. And we'll see. It's interesting because, once again, Zelensky and all these people are talking about, we are not going to do anything that cedes any ground. You already ceded ground when he rolled in and took it. Okay, the rules of war dictate you keep what you kill, essentially. Not lack. I mean, yeah, they did kill troops. And the Russians, by the rules of warfare, get to keep what they have. You may not like it, but that's life. That's life. That's how things go. So I'm not going to sit back and worry about it. You guys invited. You guys knew when you violated the Minsk agreements that this was a potential thing that was going to happen. And it happened. So you're done. Nothing else you can say about that. I know, Lou, I don't trust him either. Because he's a puppet. He's a puppet for NATO. So he's going to continue to do what the NATO leaders say. And that's the biggest problem there, is that he's just a puppet. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to our last 2 stories of the night, I just want to thank the sponsor of tonight's program, tradflags.com. Check out tradflags.com for an assortment of amazing flags that you can put around your house, put them out front with garden flag, put a magnet on the back of your car, buy one of their mugs, and so forth. Check out their monthly flags at tradflags.com. Next, August is almost over, but you could absolutely grab the flag for the month of August, the Immaculate Heart of Mary. But maybe get a jump start on September by grabbing the 7 Sorrows of Mary flag at tradflags.com. When you do, use the promo code RickCast for 10% off, and that'll help Keith from tradflags.com know where you're coming from. And it also helps out the program and the show as well. So please go to tradflags.com, promo code RickCast to save 10% off on your order at tradflags.com. And we thank the guys over at tradflags.com for making amazing products that help us publicly evangelize our faith, and B, supporting the channel. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move on to our next story of the night, and that is going to be the 100-day anniversary of Pope Leo XIV. And it's very interesting how some are talking about Pope Leo XIV and his, because the leftist media loved Francis, right? He was their pope. It was a wish list of things that, he would do. And ironically enough, Pope Francis was very much like Donald Trump in the way that they kind of just spoke off the cuff on things. And it kind of made everybody else's job more difficult. But this is an interesting article from Newsweek. How Pope Leo's popularity compares to Pope Francis's after 100 days. This is a very U.S. view of the papacy. Because the Pope is not the president. The Pope doesn't have to get a certain amount of things done in 100 days, which is another reason why I got kicked out of Trad Inc. Because they would be screaming for, we need to bring back, he needs to end the restrictions on the Latin Mass now. He needs to do this now. He needs to get rid of these people now. The Vatican doesn't work like the swamp is pretty bad in DC. The Vatican is just as bad, right? The Catholic Church is infallible. The guys who run it are not in any way, shape, or form. That's a problem with being human. But they're trying to do this kind of like, let's compare the popularity of Francis versus Leo and all these other things. Well, let's see. Pope Leo has enjoyed relatively strong popularity after his first 100 days of his papacy, which is going to be weird because most Catholics are relatively pleased. Now, of course, there are going to be people, channels on YouTube and so forth, that there was no honeymoon period. It was automatically, he's terrible. He isn't doing things. It's just a continuation. There was a guy on X today because Pope Leo's brother said that him and Pope Leo and Francis were very good friends. And this deacon or whoever he was kept saying, we can't ignore this. We can't ignore this. They were friends. They were really close. It's going to be Pope. We keep hearing it. It's going to be Francis 2.0. And of course, I had to remind this Reverend Deacon, friends, you can be friends. I'm certainly not, but there's a theory that you can be friends with people that you disagree with and not take you can have strong disagreements with people and still be friends with them. And I gave the example of Justice Scalia and Ruth Bader Ginsburg were famously very close. Ridiculously close. They both talked about it numerous times, how they valued each other's friendship. You couldn't find two people on opposite ends of the political spectrum. But there are people within the Catholic community that are waiting for Francis to emerge someday during the Angelus or during something and say, all of Pope Francis's things are going to stay and I'm going to make them more. It's like, okay. If that happens, guess what? You're not, and this is my problem, is you whining on X is not going to do anything about it. Yeah, the Vatican watches social media posts. You whining about it's not going to be really anything. Anyway, a number of polls have shown broad early goodwill from U.S. Catholics and many Americans as August 16th marks the 100th day as leader of the church. I I think it's really weird that early goodwill. It's our job to love the Pope. Even if you don't love him, it's your job to pray for the Pope and hope that every day he wakes up and does the best thing to be a worthy successor to the chair of St. Peter. Like we're supposed to pray for that every day. I mean, if you do a rosary every day, you really, and if you don't include the intentions for Pope Francis on the back end of it, you really should start considering adding that into your rosary, praying for the Holy Father and for all the Holy Church. I'll tell you my intentions, not that it matters. My 3 things that I pray for at the end of my rosary when I pray for the Holy Father. I pray for an end to the persecution of Latin Mass Catholics. I do. I pray that he unites the church, east and west. He's been making some he's been reaching out to them. And the last thing I pray for is that he's a worthy successor to the chair of St. Peter. And that's it. That's all I can do. Why does it matter? Why does it matter, Newsweek? Pope Leo, a Chicago native, was chosen as the new leader of the Catholic Church on May 8th after a 2-day conclave. He replaced Pope Francis, who died on Easter Monday. His popularity rating is useful measuring the public's response to him and his policies as he carves out his role and differences from him and his predecessor. Well, I mean, here's an unpopular thing. I know it would never be this way, but if the Catholic Church picked a pope that we all, like the ones that we were afraid they were going to pick, yeah, there may not be enthusiasm, and some of you will say like, hey, they picked Leo because the church needs money, and there has been some campaigns and things that have been launched to try and get donations back into the church. But even if they picked somebody else that you didn't like, guess what? You still got to pray for them. And I don't say that lightly. You still have to pray for the Pope. You still do. I know much smarter men than me will say you don't have to, but I'm telling you, you do. Even if he's a Pope you don't like. That included praying for Francis. I prayed for, at the end of my rosaries, I prayed for Francis. And it is what it is. An Associated Press NORC survey of 1,158 U.S. Catholics fielded June 5th through the 9th found that roughly 2/3 of American Catholics said they had a very or somewhat favorable view of Pope Leo XIV. Here's a crazy thing. Pope Francis was wildly popular around the world. He may not have been liked in many parts of them, in certain circles here in these United States, but he was wildly popular around the world. A lot of people, were upset and really sad when Pope Francis died. And just because American Catholics or Catholic Americans, didn't like Pope Francis, it didn't mean he wasn't. No, Brian, I'm in 100% agreement with you. If you're not praying for the Holy Father, we do believe he is the successor of St. Peter. And Steve Cunningham has said it, and I'm just stealing this from him. You can go to hell under a great pope, and you can go to heaven under a bad pope. You can get to. And so it is. I'm guess. Oh, those are your intentions of the Pope. Nice. Check it out in the chat at YouTube, guys. If you're, we got some good suggestions. If you're looking for intentions for the Holy Father, with your rosary. Those are really great. Honestly, for the last 4 or 5 years of Francis's papacy, my intention was very simple. My intention was, I hope the Holy Mother turns Pope Francis's heart. That's all it was. Anyway, about 3 in 10 did not know enough to form an opinion, and fewer than 1 in 10 viewed him unfavorably. The poll found that he had around the same levels of support from Democrats and Republicans and that he had more support from older people than younger Americans. According to Zenit News or some random made up news place, a poll 2 years into Pope Francis's papacy showed he had 59% favorability. Yeah, but remember, Pope Francis didn't unleash his stuff on the Latin Mass until like 8 years in. So, I mean, there were signs and stuff, but it is what it is. I mean, I don't want to get into it, but Pope Francis's popularity peaked at 90% in 2015. Meanwhile, a late July telephone survey of 1,002 adults showed Pope Leo with a 57% favorability rating. These are all just stupid metrics that, we as Catholics should ignore. Now, why am I talking about it? I think it's an interesting way to frame it, that Pope Francis was a darling of the liberal media, and Pope Leo has come out and said some things. He said something very interesting about the Pachamama today. Let me see if I can find that that people are looking at. Let's see. Let's go through Rick's X feed. Yay. Let's see here. Yeah, me just being I goof off way too much on this webpage. Let's see. All right. So this guy, who is much more popular than I am, said, just like that, Pope Leo put an end to the Pachamama debate. Christians worship nature's God, not nature itself. Whatever happened in the Vatican Gardens in 2019, it was not Christians, and Christians cannot condone it. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. And he's citing this website. Nature must neither be idolized nor endured as slaves. That's a very big difference than Pope Francis. So I have a lot of hope, and I am very high on Pope Leo XIV. I am. I hope. I'm really interested to see what he does with his AI encyclical. I hope his encyclical is on AI, because that's needed desperately. And he is a drastic. He's different than Francis because he's a canon lawyer. He's a mathematician, and I've said this over and over again, but this is the first time you've watched my show. He will never say anything off the cuff. Even if he's asked a question, he's not going to just say something to get a quote out there. At least that's what it seems like. If you've known a mathematician and you've known a lawyer, they don't speak off the cuff unless they're 100% certain about something. And even when they're 100% certain, they still don't say something. But the fact that Pope Francis, what I see from this article, and the reason we're talking about it before we move on, is that Pope Leo, it looks like, I'm going to say about the next 5 years, is going to be compared to Francis with every major decision. And if he does stuff that goes against what Francis was promoting, I guess we'll say, the liberal media will have no choice but to sing on the greatness of Pope Francis and say, well, the church was in a better place under Francis, and under Pope Leo, it's going back to its trad roots or whatever nonsense they have there. So it's interesting to see, because Francis didn't have to deal with, the first 100 days compared to Pope Benedict XVI. Pope Benedict XVI didn't have first 100 days compared to Pope St. John Paul II, right? That one, no matter who you were going after, Pope St. John Paul II. So Pope John Paul II, yeah, you were going to get crushed in that poll no matter who you were. That guy was extremely popular. But this idea that we're now measuring popularity within certain checkpoints of of Leo's papacy, I think it's in bad taste. And that's really the point of this segment. It's in bad taste that they're deciding to compare him. He's his own man. Let him be his own man. And if the Pope's brother if he says that him and Leo and Francis were friends, I don't know. Maybe you in the chat, are you friends with people you disagree with politically or all these other kinds of things? Or have you had disagreements with friends that, and still safer. Actually, I do have some differences on some topics with some of my good friends, and it doesn't change how I feel about them. I just think it's really weird that every time the Pope's brother says that, we get another round of people freaking out. Oh, they were friends. Did you realize that? You know what? Guess what? Here's a spoiler alert for you guys. Cardinal Sarah liked Pope Francis. Cardinal Burke really, Cardinal Burke had his issues, obviously, but it's a bad framing of that device. All right, let's get to one more story of the night before I head out. Little weekend box office wrap up for you. I did this on Rickcast Reviews already. I did a video. I'm trying to do box office breakdowns every week over there. But interesting enough, some of my predictions actually came true and some of them did not at the weekend box office. So this weekend, that's weekly. I want weekend. Not a great weekend for the box office. Total gross was $82 million, which is under $100 million, which breaks this streak, which is not good for theaters. Although, to be said, it's August. August is usually a dumping ground for films. The first weekend in August is the last attempt to have any kind of films make any money. Signs, Guardians of the Galaxy, the first Jeepers Creepers, those were all released the first weekend, the second weekend of August. That's still not that bad of a weekend release schedule. As you get into the third and fourth week, because that was the third week, the third weekend, the fourth weekend, and the fifth weekend. We have 5 weekends in this August. It's not going to be great. So I said Weapons was going to hold at 25, and it came in at 24 million. The expectation was up to 28. I said it was going to come in at 25. I was actually pretty strong on that one. That 48% drop is fantastic. I don't care who you are. If your film only drops 48% from one week to the next, you're doing great. It's made 88 million domestically, and it's made 60 million overseas. So it's already made 140 million. Remember, the budget for that film was like $38 million with marketing. So this film is just going to make tons and tons of cash, which is why horror movies are continuing to be pumped out, because they're cheaper to make and they have a great ceiling. Now, let me just talk about this right now. There's a film coming out in October called Good Boy, where it's a horror movie about a dog's point of view, watching his owners deal with like spirits and stuff. And somebody's like, it's the most heartbreaking film ever. I'm thinking to myself, you better not kill that dog. That dog better not die in the movie. The only thing you'll get me to well up on is if a dog dies in a movie. I'm sorry. Right? The only time I ever cried in a movie is Marley and Me. Dogs are emotional manipulation in films. There, I said it. 1,000 people could die. Don't care. Dog dies. John Wick in this entire thing. Anyway. So Weapons in its second weekend held out pretty well. 43% drop. Any film will take that. Freakier Friday comes in at 14, which was the low end of their predictions. They thought 14 to 18 million. That's a 50% drop for a film that I didn't think was going to do that well. I don't even know what the cinema score is on Freakier Friday. Do we have a Freakier Friday? We don't have a cinema score on Freakier Friday. That's interesting. The only one we have is Nobody 2. Freakier Friday comes in with 14 million. That's fine. 50% drop. You'll take that. Nobody 2, the only new film, a film that I gave a positive review on. You can check it out at Rickcast Review. I thought it was a lot of fun. Came in at 9 million. Now, the estimates on that film was between 7 and 10 million. So, on the good news, it came in on the higher end of the expectations. The bad news is it didn't even crack double digits. 9 million is not great. You want to at least see a 10 in front of that. So you figure it's got longer legs. Also, a B+ cinema score is not indicative of a really strong run in theaters. To be said, nobody made its bones on streaming. That's actually where I saw it. I found Nobody on streaming and I enjoyed it. And I thought Nobody 2 was a worthy successor to the first one. So I don't know how well it'll leg out. I think the budget on it was 25, half of that, 12 and a half. So you're looking at a $38 million budget. Nobody will make it, will make some money in theaters, but that movie is designed to do well on streaming. That's it. It's designed to do well, and it will, it'll get sold to Tubi and to Pluto TV and to all these other places and to YouTube TV, and it'll make its money back there on video on demand and all that stuff. Fantastic Four continues to plummet, and there's a very interesting trend now that July is over. The age of the superhero movie making $1 billion is done. It's completely done. The best you can expect is about 500 million. If you're a superhero movie, because Captain America, Brave New World made 415 million. The new Avengers, the Thunderbolts movie, that made 392 million. Superman is making like what is Superman making? Superman is a success by this metric at 594. It'll probably cross 600 million next weekend. The only problem is it costs 220 to make and another 200 in advertising. So you're at $400 million in, and the studio is not getting all 594 of that. They're getting about maybe 60% of that. The only good thing for Superman is that it made the majority of its money domestically. Overseas, the overseas returns are really bad, but it made most of its money here. But that's, Superman made 600. Fantastic Four, which was their big bet, 469. And it keeps dropping pretty dramatically. These drops are not great. The only time it does well are on Tuesdays when it's like half off. But every other day, mostly, you're looking at drops here. You're looking at 79% loss from Friday to Friday. And it's continuing to drop. So there's not a lot of hope there. So the Marvel, Disney, Warner Brothers, they got to go back to the drawing board. They got to learn how to make these films cheaper again. I don't know how they're going to do it. That means they're probably going to do more of their filming, outsourcing it to, England and to different places that have better tax credits so they can make them cheaper. But they got to find a way. They got to find a way to make them cheaper. They have to, because the age of the superhero film making $1 billion is over. And we can see that now that we're 3 weekends in to August. The clear winner out of Jurassic World, Superman, and Fantastic Four is Jurassic World. It's at 828. It actually did better domestically than it did domestically. I mean, it did better internationally than it did domestically. And Jurassic World Rebirth fits right in that about a $300 million drop from Jurassic World to Fallen Kingdom to Dominion to this one. They were all $300 million drops. This is right in line with that. So I'm sure they're trying to put together some kind of Jurassic World super rebirth or more rebirth or the rebirthing or whatever they're going to call it, just to get another one of these things out there. Because the budget on this one, let's AI this sucker. Budget for Jurassic World Rebirth. AI, tell me. Search. It's between 180 and 225. So even at 225, if you're looking at 225 here for the let's take the high side. 225 divided by 2. So 112 plus 225. You're looking at, so they're in for 337. So this movie probably made a little bit. This movie probably made a tiny bit of profit. And it'll do well on video on demand. It'll do well on, some of these other platforms. It'll do well on, when it gets sold to cable and things like that. So it'll be, ironically enough, Jurassic World Rebirth is the clear winner of the month of July. It's Jurassic World, it's Superman, and it's Fantastic Four in the order they were released. It's that simple. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah, Michael, after this summer, with the way these budgets have been used and the way that this has been arguably the worst summer or a really bad summer. 82 million is bad for a summer weekend. You got to be able to cross 200 million on that, or 100 million on that. It is only going to speed up. Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, I messed up the design on these. You're only going to have to speed up the use of AI. The use of AI is going to have to come sooner. It's going to. It's absolutely going to have to, because that's the only way to keep these film budgets down. That's it. So that's what happened this weekend at the box office. Good weekend for weapons. Not a bad weekend for nobody. I mean, it came in on the high side of the expectations, but overall, it just shows that films have lost their cultural impact. They have. The days of the commute, and it's a sad thing too, because theater movies used to be a communal experience, but like everything else, we're so fractured with everything that we don't even have films that we can come together around now. So it's pretty sad in that regard. All right, my wrenches, I'm out of here. That's it for this episode of Rickcast. Do me a favor on your way out, like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell on the way out to help out the show grow as much as possible. And so forth. Yeah, they're moving to Vegas, they're moving to Texas, they're moving their studios out of the country. It's all going to be AI now, because that's one way. We've already talked about it. Within 2 or 3 years, you're going to have AI films that'll cost $50 million just with the generations and the visual effect shots and things like that. If you generate a Jurassic World movie for $50 million and it makes $500 million, even with marketing at $100 million, that's $400 million profit. The profit is going to motivate these film companies to use AI. And that's just how it goes. All right, that's it for this episode of Rickcast. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I will talk to you all tomorrow. God bless. And until that day comes, free Dexter Taylor.